My friends, great to have you here. Great to be back after seemed like a really short weekend to me because I love being here so much. But here we are, raring and ready to go behind the golden EIB microphone, El Rushbo, emitting vocal vibrations coast to coast. And you can be part of it, 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. The death of Senator McCain has provided an opportunity for the drive-by media. I will explain that it's going to. I'm going to warn everybody here. It might be perceived by some. You just don't know. But it might be perceived by some that comments I might make about the aspects of Senator McCain's life could be controversial. Imagine that. I just want to prep everybody that I have my own theories about witnessing the drive-bys and how they are reacting to it and why. And by the way, just to take the pressure off of me, to show you where I'm thinking, among many other things about this, grab audio soundbite number 19. Sunday morning, CNN, State of the Union, during discussion of the death of Senator McCain, Jake Tapper.
I can't help but think that, like, part of the reason why there's such reverence for him today is because of who's in the White House right now, because they are polar opposites.
Okay, so there you have it from none other than the Never Trumper Network, CNN, making it clear that part of the reason why there's so much reverence for Senator McCain is because of who is in the White House right now. What that means is, and he's admitting it, one of the reasons there's reverence for McCain is the opportunity it provides to continue to savage Donald Trump, to continue to rip Donald Trump by setting up these comparisons between Trump and McCain and showing Trump coming up short on virtually every measure the drive-bys make. The truth of the matter is, and I've got an example of this, and there are many. You go back to 2008. Actually, you have to go back before that. If you go back to the 90s, during the Clinton years, and Fox News starts in 1996-97, MSNBC gets going, and the Clinton impeachment saga is being discussed every night on TV, and a media darling develops on MSNBC's John McCain. MSNBC loves Senator McCain because Senator McCain, for which he is being honored and recognized since his death, had the courage to criticize his own party, had the courage to criticize his own party's policies, his own party's presidents. He had the courage. That's what made McCain a really great guy to the drive-by media. And McCain sought the presidential nomination in 2000. It was open. George W. Bush got the nomination eventually, but it was a really knockdown, drag-out primary fight in South Carolina. Suppose some of the tricks played on McCain by the Bush campaign were considered to be unconscionable, unacceptable. I mean, so below the belt that you needed to get down to the sewer to see the result. McCain was livid at the time. A lot of people supporting McCain were livid at the time. Bush goes on to win. And in the ensuing years, McCain remains the media darling. I mean, the drive-by media loved John McCain. He was practically a regular guest on MSNBC. It got to the point, folks, for those of you who don't remember, that John McCain would frequently refer to the drive-by media as his base voters, as his base supporters. And all during this time, well, not all during it, but as we approached the year 2008, and it became clear that Senator McCain was going to seek the Republican nomination. And I remember issuing a warning, I don't know how many times, but too many times to count here, to Senator McCain and his campaign team, that the minute you seek the Republican nomination, you are going to be cast aside by this media that has been fawning over you and loving you. You are going to become the enemy. And boy, did he. He became, especially when Obama got the nomination and McCain got the Republican nomination, people have forgotten the long knives came out for McCain by all of these people in the media who had made it look like they loved him and revered him, and they did. And the reason they did was because of the maverick personality and McCain's willingness to criticize his own party. McCain's willingness to talk about crossing the aisle, shaking hands, working together to get things done. The politics of compromise, because that always meant Republicans losing. When we talked about, in those days, about Republicans compromising, what it meant was Republicans forgetting their agenda and signing on to the Democrat agenda. And it's always been that way. There was nothing new about it then. And it was very frustrating for a lot of people that Senator McCain didn't see it. Or if he did, thought that he could overcome it. Well, then when they made the decision to pick Sarah Palin, folks, that ended any pretense of love and respect for Senator McCain. And then you make the Democrat nominee Obama the first African-American presidential nominee, and McCain did not have a chance in the drive-by media. The people who had made him think they respected him, made him believe they loved him, cast him aside. And it wasn't that he remained in their eyes a good guy and friendly. They went after him. And the Democrat Party went after him as though he had been a rock-ribbed conservative forever and had never had a flirtation with the drive-by media at all. It was easily predictable. It was sad to see, I have to tell you, because it was so predictable. And let me give you just one example, and there are a plethora of these if you wanted to take the time to go get them. John Lewis, who got beat upside the head, the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, during the Great Civil Rights March. John Lewis tweeted on Saturday, Senator John McCain was a warrior for peace. He will be deeply missed by people all around the world. Well, let's go back to Politico, October 11th, 2008. Basically 3 weeks away from the presidential election. And there's a Politico story in the headline, John Lewis, invoking George Wallace, says McCain and Palin are playing with fire. Politico civil rights icon and Georgia Congressman John Lewis is accusing John McCain of stoking hate, likening the atmosphere at Republican campaign events to those featuring George Wallace, the segregationist former governor of Alabama and presidential candidate. McCain's campaign has responded with a statement in the candidate's name urging Obama to repudiate Lewis's comments. John Lewis, in a statement issued for Politico's Arena Forum, said, "What I am seeing reminds me too much of another destructive period in American history. Senator McCain and Governor Palin are sowing the seeds of hatred and division, and there is no need for this hostility in our political discourse." Lewis didn't accuse McCain of imitating Wallace, but suggested there were similarities. Okay, this is one example, and it's one of a plethora I could surface if I was to take the time, if I wanted to, but it makes the point. It provides the illustration. So after Senator McCain passes away, he becomes a good guy again, in the eyes of John Lewis. Senator McCain was a warrior for peace. He will be deeply missed by people all around the world. Well, during the 2008 campaign, he wasn't a warrior for anything but hate and racism, according to the same guy. Now, you might say, well, Rush, come on. It was a presidential campaign. You have to forget that stuff. You have to look past. See, that's what I don't do, folks. I think in the heat of battle is when Democrats say what they really mean. And John Lewis' example here is one of many. You go back and look, I mean, the viciousness for McCain, the viciousness for Palin. It was bad. It was bad enough for McCain alone before he chose Palin. After he chose Palin, it became, it rivaled some of the mean-spirited and viciousness that we've seen against Trump. People have just forgotten about it, and I do believe that Jake Tapper is right. I think Jake Tapper has a point. The death of Senator McCain has provided the drive-by media with a brand new reason to go after Donald Trump. The death of Senator McCain and as Jake Tapper said here, the reason why there is such reverence for McCain, he's admitting it. The reason there's such reverence for McCain is because of Trump. Means the reverence may not be all that genuine. It may be that it is timely and serves a purpose. Here's another little bit of hypocrisy. How do you square this? The drive-by media supports all of these people who protest against America, protest against the American flag, take a knee and kneel during NFL games, some of the players who do. The general disrespect shown for the flag, and anybody that comes along, especially any minority group that has anything negative to say about America, they focus on it, they love it, they promote it. How does that jibe with promoting and having such reverence for such an obvious hero and patriot as John McCain? If you wanted to, you can spend all kinds of time noting the hypocrisy that is all over the place. The left finally finds a war hero they love while supporting the disrespecting of the flag by NFL players. Yeah, I think a lot of what we see in the drive-by media is not real. It's not genuine. It is agenda-oriented and agenda-related. The drive-by media, Senator McCain was very valuable to them. He was a ranking Republican for whom there was universal respect and admiration around the world, around the country. And when he criticized his own party, and I'm not just talking about Obamacare and Trump. I mean, when he disrespected, when he criticized George W. Bush, when he came up with this campaign finance reform business, whenever McCain did anything that was perceived to be anti the Republican Party, they just showered him with love and affection and respect. And that was Senator McCain's value to them. And the proof that it was not real, when they had a chance to get behind the man they revered, when they had a chance to get behind the guy they thought was the best example of politics in Washington, when they had a chance to get behind this man, when he ran for president twice, they did not do it. He became, like every other Republican, a target, with a target and a bullseye all over him and his campaign. And it just, it was frustrating to watch this, be able to predict it and know that it was going to happen. There are other things, too, about this that we'll get into as the program unfolds, but there are other things happen. For example, have you heard that Trump didn't leave the flag at half-mast long enough? Trump put the flag at half-mast for the, if you go look at the law and at federal regulations, for a member of Congress, the flag flies at half-mast for a day or two, and that's it. The flag flew at half-mast for the appropriate amount of time, and then it was raised, and the drive-bys are livid, because it's yet another opportunity to attack Donald Trump as some savage, as some unsophisticated, as some cretin. Meanwhile, NBC, Wall Street Journal has a poll. I think I predicted this. I think I predicted to you that the Cohen story and the Manafort conviction would not affect Trump's approval numbers with his supporters. It wouldn't matter to them. NBC News, Wall Street Journal has a poll out that basically says exactly that. And the drive-bys are puzzled. Once again, the drive-by, they can't believe Trump survived the Access Hollywood video. They can't believe Trump's going to survive this. They just can't believe it. And then to add insult to injury, the stock market hit a brand new record high today of 26,000. NASDAQ hit 8,000 for the first time ever on the news that we have a renegotiated NAFTA trade deal with Mexico. Tell me, did any Democrats have anything to do with this? They didn't. This is a Donald Trump production. This follows Donald Trump telling Pompeo to scrub the trip to North Korea. There's no sense in talking to him. They're not following through on any commitments they made. We're not going to waste any time with them. This upset the Chi-Coms. The Chi-Coms thought that they were going to be able to pull one over on Trump with the little potbelly dictator in North Korea leading the way. But Trump says, if you're not going to take this serious, I'm getting out. We're not going to, this is a joke. I met you halfway, tried to do things in a way that showed you respect, but you're apparently not interested, so we're pulling out. In the meantime, imagine the Chi-Coms reacting to the news themselves of this brand new trade deal with Mexico. Mexico. Supposedly, Mexico hates Trump. Supposedly, this was not possible. It's just another in a long line of campaign assurances and promises that have been kept. Isn't lowering the flag for somebody to half-mast an insult, given what that flag represents? I mean, whenever the left has anybody, NFL players, I don't care who they are, when they trash the flag, when they disrespect the flag, when they disrespect the national anthem, any symbol of America and patriotism, the media applauds it. The media thinks it's great. The media promotes it. And the media encourages more behavior because that's what real dissent is. And that's what real freedom of speech is. So if it's so worthwhile, if it's so valuable, if it is so meaningful, it is so important to trash the flag, to disrespect it during the national anthem prior to sporting events, then why is it an honor to lower the flag to half-mast to honor a great hero's death? Yeah, it's media. But by the way, folks, I have a lot here today, and I just want to warn you, despite my best efforts, it's going to take almost all 3 hours to get everything in. I mean, I have more things on Senator McCain. We have, my statement last week that many cable news networks bounced off of. I said that I think now that these Trump investigations have gone to the New York prosecutors, state and federal, I said, I think now that Trump's business is in the crosshairs, the full-fledged effort to ruin him and his company and his kids is under full steam ahead. And I've got some backup for that now. Some things have been said over the weekend that let it be known that that's pretty right. And I've got other people saying on cable news over the weekend that I'm a little bit excessive in those remarks. It may not be quite the case. And so we just loaded here today, so hang on. The new NAFTA framework said they used to call it NAFTA. We're going to call it the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. We will get rid of the name NAFTA. It was a bad deal, he says. It was one of the dumbest and worst deals ever, so we're going to get rid of it, and we're going to call it the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. Now, NAFTA was the name it had during the negotiation during the Clinton administration. Let me give a couple of headlines here. Florida law enforcement, 15 people shot, 4 dead, 11 being treated in deadly mass shooting. And the drive-by media has been all over it since it happened on television. A headline from yesterday, Chicago Sun-Times, 23 shot in Chicago since Friday evening. At least 23 people have been shot in Chicago, 2 of them fatally, since Friday evening. That you haven't heard about. And you know what? I'm thinking you might not hear very much about this Jacksonville shooting after the preliminaries, because it appears that the shooter was part of the Trump resistance. The shooter apparently, on a Reddit thread, was very, very anti-Trump. And so the drive-bys are not going to want to make a vast move on this guy. Make it look like the resistance is taking up arms, because people that hate Trump are supposed to hate guns. You see, the only people that like guns are Republicans. And when it comes to conservatives in the media, as far as the media is concerned, conservatives who are no longer able to be conservatives are the best kind. Republicans who are no longer able to be Republicans are the best kind. And they get all kinds of fawning, reverence, and treatment. How about the Pope? We can take the hypocrisy route on this. Pope Francis long knew of the cardinal's abuse and must resign, says Archbishop. On the final day of Pope Francis' mission to Ireland, as he issued wrenching apologies for clerical sex abuse scandals. By the way, it seems that this is so widespread around the world. Everybody thinks the church, I guess, dealt with this some years ago, and it's becoming clear that not only has the church not dealt with it, it has continued to spread. And there are now calls for the Pope's resignation because he knew about it. Long knew of the cardinal's abuse. On the final day of Pope Francis' mission to Ireland, as he issued wrenching apologies for clerical sex abuse scandals, a former top Vatican diplomat claimed in a letter published on Sunday that Il Papa himself had joined top Vatican officials in covering up the abuses and called for his resignation. The letter, a bombshell written by Carlo Maria Vigano, the former top Vatican diplomat in the United States, a staunch critic of the Pope's, seemed time to do more than simply derail the Pope's uphill efforts to win back the Irish faithful, who have turned away from the church in large numbers. And then I recall that the Pope really went after oil executives one time when it came to climate change. Pope Francis, in fact, this is June 19th of this year. I really am fortunate to be blessed with such a wonderful memory. As I remember this, Pope Francis to oil executives, no time to lose on climate change. The Pope urged immediate action on climate change, stating that levels of carbon dioxide emissions and atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases are disturbing and a cause for real concern. In June, Pope Francis summoned a group of oil and finance executives to the Vatican for a speech on the need to rapidly transition to cleaner forms of energy. This is the Vicar of Christ doing this, reinforcing the warnings in his 2015 encyclical. The Pope urged immediate action on climate change, stating that levels of carbon dioxide emissions, atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases are disturbing and a cause for real concern. Could we all agree that rampant pedophilia in the Catholic Church is disturbing and a cause for real concern? Could we agree? Am I being too controversial in making that statement? Now, has the Pope convened the offending cardinals and told them to stop it? Has he convened the offending priests and monsignors and told them to cut it out? No. In fact, the story is that he's long known of all of this and hasn't done much about it. But when it comes time to climate change, greenhouse gases, there is no time to lose. Well, what about this other? What about doing it for the children? The fact of the matter is that industries in the United States do a better job managing CO2 emissions than all other organizations on Earth. So once again, folks, rampant and blatant hypocrisy that is related to a political agenda. And even this pedophilia crisis in the Catholic Church, it is, as I say, it is so much more widespread than anybody knew. This is another one of those areas where you have to tread very, very carefully about what you and how you say what you say. But this is so widespread, and this is so damaging and so destructive that it doesn't seem to me to just be coincidental. How long is it going to be before there are serious calls for allowing priests to marry? How long is it going to be before somebody starts suggesting, maybe they have, I'm not Catholic, so maybe people are. How long is it going to be before people start pointing out that look, if you're going to demand celibacy, you're not going to allow marriage, then you're going to get what you get. I suspect it may even be whispered about now, but it will pick up intensity as time goes on. Let's grab phones while we have a chance here before the break. We'll start in Adam Neck, Connecticut. This is Matt. Welcome, sir. You're up first today. It's great to have you here with us.
Mr. Limbaugh, thank you greatly for taking my phone call, especially in the first hour. I just wanted to point out that maybe Mr. McCain's death proves again that the only good type of Republican is a dead Republican.
Hang on.
On that.
Whoa, hang on. Would you? I'm sorry for the spasm there. What was that you said?
It seems that Mr. McCain's death might prove again that the only good Republican is a dead Republican.
And you're saying this because of all the accolades and reverence for Senator McCain after he passed away?
The only time that Republicans or conservatives seem to get praised is when they're betraying their party. And if you're dead long enough, like Reagan, maybe eventually you can actually be somebody that can be emulated or agreed with when the time's right.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Reagan. Even when they start praising Reagan, they do it after a bunch of history revision. They claim that Reagan did and said things and believed things that he didn't. And they do this after enough time has passed that they're banking on the fact that a lot of people won't remember. But that's a good point too. Look, some people will think that your statement there is a bit extreme, but if you just take it at its basic, the only good Republican is a dead Republican. Is what you
yes, that just calling it the way I see it, sir.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. I believe that. Well, look, I'm glad you got in the first hour too. It's so rare to take calls in the first hour, but I'm glad you made it in here, Matt. It's along the lines of what I just said. The only good conservative is a conservative who can't be conservative anymore. And so, look. For those of you bothered by the statement, there's one thing, if you are not aware of it. The media, for years, lavished praise on John McCain like no other Republican. Like no other Republican in my life. There may be some that I forgot, but McCain in the modern era was the beneficiary of more positive, adoring, fawning media. I've never seen a Republican get that kind of coverage. And it was when he was being critical of his own party, when he was crossing the aisle to work with Democrats on issues they cared about, like campaign finance reform. And a number of other things which were considered to be against his own party. The media just loved it. But the point is, when McCain, he sadly, I think, really believed it was genuine by calling the media his base. Now, he was joking a couple times when he said this, but there was no question that he was trying to cultivate them. He knew he was going to run for office, for president, higher office. He knew he wanted the media on his side. Who wouldn't? And I think that there is ample evidence to believe that he believed he had succeeded, at least in taming them a bit, that he was going to be getting a better break than most Republicans. But when he got the nomination and then Obama was the Democrat nominee, it was over. And McCain and Palin became the arch enemy like all Republicans have been. And all of that fawning and all of that reverence just seemed to fade away as though it had never existed. I knew it was going to happen. And it was, I don't know, it's one of those times I hate being right. Let me take another brief time out as the minutes keep rolling by at a record clip here. Don't go anywhere. Guiding light through times of trouble, confusion, murkiness, tumult, hypocrisy, and even the good times. Despite Lanny Davis lying his butt off on every network, claiming that Michael Cohen had information that Trump had prior knowledge that Russia hacked the Have you heard about this? Have you heard about the two big lies Lanny Davis told? He went on cable news and told everybody that Cohen had proof that Trump knew about the Trump Tower meeting and encouraged it. And he had said he had evidence, information, that Trump had prior knowledge that Russia hacked DNC emails. Lanny Davis said that Trump knew about the emails, the Podesta emails that WikiLeaks published before they were published. And both have been demonstrated to be false. And they both were made possible and facilitated by CNN. There's a reporter at CNN, Jim Sciutto, not to be confused with Jim Acosta. This is Jim Sciutto, S-C-I-U-T-T-O, who I think came from the Obama administration. And he spread two knowingly false fake news stories, as did Lanny Davis, about Cohen's knowledge of Trump and Trump's supposed knowledge of all these things the Russians were doing before we knew about it. And they've been demonstrated now to be false. They were lies. And despite this, despite the blizzard of media lies, despite the wild speculation designed to drive Donald Trump out of office, Trump's support remains solid. And why? Because a sizable number of Americans do not trust the media anymore. They do not trust polling data anymore. A sizable number of Americans love the United States, and they are benefiting profoundly from the revitalized economy. A sizable number of Americans know that Robert Mueller is running a phony collusion, Democrat opposition research operation designed to cover up the crimes and corruption of the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton. A sizable number of Americans know all of these things. NBC, Wall Street Journal poll, Trump approval remarkably stable after a stormy week of bad news. The drive-by media just can't learn. I predicted last week that these scandals would not upset Trump's approval numbers on balance. Just like I knew that the Access Hollywood video wouldn't. And you know why I knew that? Because I know the Trump voter, and I know the Trump voter is fed up with a bunch of things being leaked into a campaign like late in October, the October surprise. They're fed up with things like that affecting the outcome of elections, particularly when they don't care. When it comes to Donald Trump, they don't care about any of that. And they never have, because Donald Trump, in their minds, is the only thing standing in the way of their lives being changed forever by virtue of the Washington establishment continuing to transform this country into something it was not founded to be. Donald Trump's the guy. They're not going to get rid, they're not going to abandon him, and they're not going to sit idly by while other people try to destroy him. NBC News, listen to this. After a week, it saw President Trump's former campaign chairman convicted on 8 counts of fraud, and his former lawyer plead guilty to felony campaign finance charges. President's job approval remains virtually unchanged. New polling from NBC and the Wall Street Journal shows. Can't believe it. They just can't believe it. Because I'm here to tell you and remind you again, the real focal point of all of these attacks on Trump has been to drive down this number. This is the only way they're going to be able to force Trump out of office. They can't indict a sitting president. They're not going to ever have 2/3 of the Senate vote to convict him if he's impeached. Oh, and speaking of which, the Democrats have a new policy. Their new policy is to not talk about impeachment. Once again, the Democrats want to hide from voters their real intentions. But something might have happened to screw it all up. There's this California Democrat that all the cable networks love this guy. Fox puts him on 3 times a week. CNN may as well give him a camera in his office. His name is Swalwell. Eric Swalwell. It's a nice guy, don't misunderstand, but he's a raging leftist. And he has just admitted yesterday on, I think it was one of the Sunday shows, ABC, they don't have anywhere near enough evidence to impeach Trump. They don't have any. They haven't seen anything yet, despite all that we've seen in the news for a year and a half. Now, is he just executing a Democrat strategy of trying to talk everybody out of thinking they want to impeach or not? I don't know. But it manifests itself as very fascinating to me. Russian oligarchs in the McCain-Palin presidential campaign in 2008. Did you know that? You didn't? Well, hang on. Great to have you here, folks. It's Rush Limbaugh, the EIB Network, the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. And the phone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, maybe 1, 2, 3. Okay, I want you to grab soundbite number 4, and we're going to go in order from there. And in fact, that's what I'm going to start with. I've got a whole stack here related to what's coming up. I made a statement last week after it became clear to me, ladies and gentlemen, that the reason Mueller, the special counsel, was passing off so many of these cases to New York was to try to avoid the possibility Trump could pardon a bunch of people. Now, Manafort remains federal, so Manafort could be pardoned. The Cohen situation, he's beyond being pardoned anyway. Cohen's already thrown in. He's with the Southern District of New York, which is federal. But there are others that the Manhattan DA has granted immunity to the CFO of the Trump organization. And when I saw that, it made me remember a prediction that I made months ago, not even in recent times. When I found out how desperate the Democrats were to get hold of Trump's tax returns, they think that Trump's tax returns are the way to really get him in jail. They're really the way to ruin him. Trump back in, I don't know the years, it's either in the early 2000s or in the late 90s. It's public knowledge that Trump took a massive tax deduction one year that was permitted and was allowed. The statute has run now on that, I think, but it was in the neighborhood of $800 million. I mean, it was a huge deduction if it were to be reviewed by somebody like John Koskinen or Lois Lerner, for example. And if it could be revisited and somehow in a new audit not permitted, and I'm just speculating because I don't know that this can happen, but think of the penalties and interest on being told by the IRS that $800 million deduction you took is now not allowed and you've got to pay that plus penalties. It could wipe out a bunch of people. And so I have long thought that, and to illustrate my opinion of just how serious these people are in what we're calling the deep state Washington establishment, how serious they are in getting rid of Trump, that I have expressed the thought that if they could ruin him, they would. If they could wipe him out, I'm talking financially, If they could wipe him out and ruin the Trump organization and take away the futures of his kids, they would do it. I have no doubt they would do it. That's how serious this is as far as they're concerned. That's how serious the grievance. This is how serious what Trump has done. To have the audacity to run for president and win, and then start draining the swamp and take away security clearances and everything else that he's doing. I mean, this is right after their lifeblood, what Trump is doing, and they are fuming over it still. And I think, have got to stop him however they can and send a message to anybody else not to ever try this. So let's go to the audio sound bites. On the tax deduction, I'm not sure about statute. I'm not sure how long you go before they can revisit something and make you, even after they've passed on it. I'm just not familiar enough with tax law. But I'm not saying that it could reverse it. And so I'm talking about their intentions. I really want you to understand what I think their state of mind is. I don't have the slightest idea whether they could go back and revisit that deduction and disallow it. And I haven't asked anybody, which I would have to do to find out the answer. Maybe some of you in the audience, tax law experts, already know. But the real point in making the prediction is not to predict that per se would happen. I'm just trying to find different ways to illustrate for you what I think their mindset is, the degree of hatred that they have and contempt for Trump and everybody that's with him. So let's go to the audio sound bites and set up the next phase of this. We'll start with Shannon Bream on her program Friday night, Fox News Channel, Fox News at Night with Shannon Bream, and she's got Juan Williams on there, and she plays a soundbite of me for him to react to.
I want to play something to your point that Rush Limbaugh had to say about what all of this going after the organization, the business, the kids, what it's all about.
Getting rid of Donald Trump is it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter the pretext. Getting rid of him is all that matters. If they have to ruin Ivanka, if they have to ruin Jared, if they have to ruin Don Jr. and Eric, so what? They'll do it. That's what this is all about. Okay, here's Juan Williams' reaction to that.
I hope not. That would be unfair. And I think from my perspective, you do not want to politicize any judicial effort, any law enforcement action in this country. And if our politics really comes down to somebody doesn't like Donald Trump, or somebody says we're going to go after our political enemies and our political foes like the person who we beat in the last election, Hillary Clinton, it lessens public trust in the integrity of the justice system of the United States. There are people who want to say to the conservative base in this country, they're going after our hero, they're going after Donald Trump.
Now, I want you to stop and think about this. A lot of people, you would think, would have a very, very hyper reaction to that claim I made. Have you heard anybody else making that claim? And don't make no mistake, I'm not trying to make this about me, but to sit there and say that I think these people are trying, they want to ruin Donald Trump. And if they can destroy his business and so forth and so on, you would think that that would be greeted with a reaction of how insane is that? How stupid is that? Instead, Juan Williams says, gee, I hope that's not happening. Trying to criminalize policy differences, I hope that's not happening. Hope it's not happening? We have a two-tier justice system. They most certainly are trying to criminalize things that Donald Trump has not done. And they are ignoring criminal activity on the part of his opponent, Hillary Clinton, and people related with her campaign. They're having to make up charges. They had to plant spies in the Trump campaign because they didn't think there were spies there. They didn't think the Russians were there. They wanted to plant the notion that there were Russian spies in the Trump campaign trying to affect the outcome of things. But there's no question we have a two-tier justice system, and this is striking and it is dangerous, the degree to which a two-tier justice system exists in this country. So we move on to Bret Baier and his program also on Friday night, special report with Bret Baier. During the all-star panel discussion, Bret Baier started off one of the panels introducing and playing that clip, or a clip.
Here's what Rush Limbaugh says about all of this action in the Southern District of New York.
They're making a beeline for Trump's tax returns. It happened many, many moons ago. Donald Trump took a tax deduction of nearly $1 billion that was permitted. And if they could somehow get a judgment via an audit, that massive deduction actually should not be allowed, should be reversed. Well, I think this is 20 years ago. The penalties and interest on that would wipe out the Trump organization. That's what their real objective in all of this is. If they have to ruin Ivanka, if they have to ruin Jared, if they have to ruin Don Jr. and Eric, so what? They'll do it. Okay, so that's 2 Fox shows that bite has aired on, and now we have reaction first up from Marie Harf. She's the former State Department spokesman during the Obama administration when John Kerry was in there as Secretary of State. And Bret Baier said, okay, Marie, there's one perspective of what Rush thinks is happening. What's your reaction to that?
First of all, the only crimes that we care if the president's involved in cannot be related to Russia, right? We should care if the president's involved or implicated in crimes, even if they're not related to Russia, because he's the president.
Stop the tape.
I think taking a step back is helpful. But
what does that mean? We're going to do line by line, start, stop here. You want to get this ready back at the top. First of all, the only crimes we care about the president's involved can't be related to Russia, right? Which means, hey, I'm fully support what the SDNY is doing looking at his business. I'm all for the Manhattan DA. I mean, it's okay that we're looking at things beyond Russia, right? That's what she's saying. We should care if the president's involved or implicated in crimes, even if they're not related to Russia. Wait a minute. This whole thing supposedly was about Russia. Now when she has a chance to nuke my comment, throw it out of the park, ridicule it, whatever, she doesn't do that. Here it is again from the top.
first of all, the only crimes that we care if the president's involved in cannot be related to Russia, right? We should care if the president's involved or implicated in crimes, even if they're not related to Russia, because he's the president. So I think taking a step back is helpful. But on the CFO here, it's broader than just Stormy Daniels in these payments, right? As head of the Trump Organization's finance, he is involved in things that we know Mueller's looking at. Ties to Russian financing, ties to Russian oligarchs, Trump Tower Moscow. So we don't know what the answers are going to be from this, but the CFO getting immunity, I think, is a bigger problem than just this narrow campaign finance issue. It could be a much broader problem, and it could be related to Russia.
She's holding out hope that what I'm saying may end up happening, because she is holding out hope that Trump did a bunch of stuff in addition to whatever they're looking at Russia. She's agreeing. Whether she knows it or not, she's making the point. I said they will do anything, anywhere they have to go, any little hint of impropriety, they'll follow it if the objective here is to get rid of Trump. And she's essentially acknowledging that that would be perfectly fine, because he's president, and anything he did wrong we should look at. Hopefully it will all tie to Russia, but even if it doesn't, he's president, we should find out. And getting the CFO of the Trump Organization, why, that's big. He might be involved in things that we know Mueller's looking at, ties to Russian oligarchs. By the way, speaking of that, well, I've commingled stacks here, but I have a story of Russian oligarchs being involved in McCain-Palin campaign of 2008 coming up. I want to stick with the soundbite. So that's Marie Harf. Up next, Bret Baier and Mark Thiessen continue the discussion.
What if the Southern District of New York and the prosecutors in New York are making an effort, maybe not as detailed as Rush details there, but outside of what the Justice Department is actually doing? In other words, the state, from both the Manhattan District Attorney and the New York prosecutors, saying maybe we can indict the president even if the DOJ has memos saying you can't.
For under state law, which
Yeah.
of course you can't give a pardon for state law to the President of the United States. That's entirely possible that something like that is happening. Certainly Mueller, and maybe that's why he passed it off, is because Mueller can't indict the president, and maybe there are things that he thinks are indictable in a New York courtroom.
Well, finally, in essence, essentially here you have a group of people, rather than refute it and suggest, that's taking it too far, that's not what Mueller's about, they're thinking it could be possible. You go to New York so that Trump can't pardon people convicted there. And maybe since the DOJ, and it's been the case since 1973, it's in the regs of the Justice Department that presidents can't be indicted. But that doesn't say the Manhattan DA can't. And that doesn't say that other state attorneys general can't indict Trump. Well, let me just tell you this. If we're talking about the Manhattan DA or state attorneys general, we're not talking Russia, folks. We are talking action, activity, law breaking, whatever they think Trump did in New York. We're talking about the Trump organization. We're talking about things that Trump allegedly has done long before he became president. You know, the Democrats are trying to say, hey, it's tit for tat. You guys had a special counsel and you went out for Clinton. Well, yeah, because those were things that Clinton did while in the Oval Office. All of these things you're chasing Trump for outside this Russia business, none of it happened while he was president. None of it did. So you're trying to impeach a guy. You're trying to force a guy out of office for things he did, in fact, even before he became a candidate, much less before he was nominated and then elected. So do not doubt me. Now, here's the pièce de résistance. It's a column. It's not a news story, but it's in Bloomberg over the weekend. Try this headline: the prosecutors who have declared war on the president. The Office of the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York is not done digging into the Trump Organization. Would you also be interested in knowing that the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, forced the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, the guy that runs the office, is a Trump appointee. He has forced that lawyer to recuse himself from all this. The Trump appointee has been told to recuse by Rod Rosenstein, the deputy AG, not Sessions. Rod Rosenstein's even running this, all because of this so-called tie to Russia, which means that Sessions has recused and he can't be involved, even though this isn't about Russia now, despite how much they want you to think. Prosecutors who have declared war on the president. This is an opinion piece by somebody named Noah Feldman, who is supportive as he can be of the prosecutors declaring war on the president. That's exactly what I'm saying is happening here. Mueller has declared war, and now you've got the SDNY and the Manhattan DA. The prosecutors who have declared war on the president. Now, it's premature. And again, this is an opinion piece. It's not a news story. So we have to keep that in mind. And it could be disgusting as it can be if it is true. This is, I say, just an opinion piece. The prosecutors who have declared war, the Office of the U.S. Attorney, isn't done digging into the Trump Organization. Right there it is. This guy may be writing an opinion piece, but somebody has fed him a leak or two as to what they are really doing. So I'm going to reach around and pat myself on the back and say, way to go, got another one right. We'll take a brief time out. Welcome back. How are you? All right, here we go. I have a story here from January 25, 2008, from the Washington Post. Now, I'm not going to be able to get all this in before the next upcoming break. Headline: Aide helped controversial Russian meet McCain. By the way, warning, this is not a critical piece or comment from me on Senator McCain. It's not what this is. Ready? A top political advisor in Senator John McCain's presidential campaign helped arrange an introduction in 2006 between McCain and a Russian billionaire whose suspected links to anti-democratic and organized crime figures are so controversial, the U.S. government revoked his visa. Rick Davis, who is now McCain's campaign manager. Remember this, 2008. Rick Davis, who, by the way, is the Davis in Manafort Davis, LLC. Not to be confused with Rick Gates. This is Rick Davis of Manafort Davis, McCain's campaign manager. Washington Post, Rick Davis, McCain's campaign manager, helped set up the encounter between McCain and Russian aluminum magnate Oleg Deripaska. Does the name sound familiar? Deripaska was involved in the so-called Russian Trump Tower meeting with Trump Jr. Rick Davis, McCain's campaign, who was also his campaign manager in 2008. I'm sorry, in 2000, 2008. 2000, his campaign manager 2000 and 2008. Set up the encounter between McCain and Russian aluminum oligarch Oleg Deripaska in Switzerland during an international economic conference. At the time, Rick Davis was working for a lobbying firm, Davis Manafort. Hang on. Q-Stole, all right. And back to your phone calls here in just a second. But I don't have to hurry through this, at least not as much as I had to hurry through it. Again, Washington Post, January 20th, 2008. This is the year McCain is running for president the second time. The headline, Aide Helped Controversial Russian Meet McCain. A top political advisor in Senator McCain's presidential campaign helped arrange an introduction in 2006 between McCain and a Russian billionaire. This is 2 years prior to McCain running. The billionaire in Russia with suspected links to anti-democratic and organized crime figures. So controversial, the U.S. government revoked his visa. This is Deripaska. You've heard his name mentioned in relation to the Trump Tower meeting that Don Jr. had with Russians. Rick Davis, McCain's campaign manager, also in 2000, Rick Davis, campaign manager for McCain, helped set up the meeting between McCain and the Russian oligarch, the aluminum magnate, Oleg Deripaska, in Switzerland during an international economic conference. At the time, Rick Davis, McCain's campaign manager, was working for a lobbying firm, Davis Manafort, and seeking to do business with the Russian billionaire. Deripaska was grateful for the introduction to McCain, writing a thank you note to Rick Davis and his partner, Paul Manafort, and offering to assist them in a subsequent business deal, according to a copy of the note obtained by the Washington Post. With a net worth of more than $13 billion, Deripaska is one of the richest men in Russia and is a close ally of Vladimir Putin. Why, what do you think was happening? Why, were the Russians involved in the McCain campaign in 2008? But wait, folks, this gets even better. McCain has been one of Putin's sharpest U.S. critics, calling for Russia to be kicked out of the group of 8 industrialized nations because of Putin's anti-democratic activities. McCain has also repeatedly complained about the negative impact of Kremlin-linked oligarchs like this guy, Deripaska. When Deripaska met McCain, Rick Davis was part of Davis Manafort, a lobbying firm being paid to provide political advice to pro-Russian and oligarch-funded candidates in Ukraine. Davis's firm, Davis Manafort, provided political advice to a pro-Russian party in Ukraine during a parliamentary election in 2006. McCain, on the other hand, backed President Viktor Yushchenko, a Western-oriented reformer who led 2004's Orange Revolution, which overturned what he and his allies considered an election stolen by the party helped by Davis's firm. Now, let me connect the dots here for you, ladies and gentlemen, because the story goes on. Deripaska, in 2006, wrote to Rick Davis of Davis Manafort. In other words, in 2006, Deripaska wrote to Davis and his partner, Paul Manafort, to thank them for arranging the meeting. Thank you very much for setting up everything in clusters so spectacularly. Davis wrote, it's very interesting to meet Senators McCain, Chambliss, and Sununu in such an intimate setting. That was Deripaska thanking Davis for setting up this meeting. 7 months later, August 2006, Rick Davis of Davis Manafort, present again at a social gathering attended by McCain and Deripaska, this time in Montenegro, another Eastern European country in which Davis's firm was working. So, McCain's campaign manager, Rick Davis of Davis Manafort, is arranging introductions between McCain and a Russian oligarch, Oleg Deripaska. Deripaska is thanking Davis for all of the access. Davis was McCain's campaign manager from July 2007 to November 2008. Before that, he was a McCain advisor. So let's review. Donald Trump fires Paul Manafort after 3 months as his campaign manager because of his lobbying efforts for Russian-aligned leaders in Ukraine. When Trump finds out about it, he gets rid of Manafort. Meanwhile, McCain kept Rick Davis on as his campaign manager for more than a year, even though Davis was a partner in Manafort's lobbying firm, and Davis is still to this day a managing partner of Davis Manafort. Because Manafort hasn't been accused of trying to get Trump to meet with Russians, but Rick Davis succeeded in having Russians meet McCain. Rick Davis hooked up a notorious Russian oligarch and Putin pal with John McCain a couple of times, including on a yacht where they were celebrating McCain's 70th birthday. But would you like to know the kicker to this? The kicker is that when government law enforcement found out about it, they warned McCain that there might be a bad guy Russian actor that he's interacting. They warned McCain who this guy might be. They did not plant or embed spies in the McCain campaign to try to get McCain doing deals with Russia or Deripaska. They warned McCain. They did not warn Donald Trump. But does anybody find it fascinating that Paul Manafort, who worked for Trump for all of 3 months and never once facilitated a meeting between Trump and any Russians, that Manafort's partner is a longstanding member of McCain's inner circle and did arrange such things? And we have to remember, too, that when the Steele dossier, when it first became known, McCain was one of those who dispatched somebody from his office to go to the UK and get a copy of it. McCain was one of the early believers in the dossier. This is so thick, folks, and murky that seeing to the bottom of this with the naked eye is next to impossible. But here we have Davis Manafort involved in 2006 and 2008 in the McCain campaign, and McCain knowingly palling around and being introduced to Deripaska. Nobody thinks it's a big deal. Nobody thinks the Russians are trying to affect the campaign. Nobody thinks the Russians are trying to mess with the election. Nobody thinks the Russians are trying to sabotage anything. And now the same people who were not introduced to Trump and were not brought into Trump's inner circle, but not for lack of trying, the same people are now said to be actively attempting to undermine American elections by trying to make deals with Trump and have Trump blackmailable or whatever silly charges they're making here. about Trump and Russia collusion and Trump-Russia meddling, but we didn't hear anything about McCain and Russian meddling in 2008, even though it was happening then even more widespread than it ever did with Trump, and with the same players. Manafort and his partner Rick Davis and Oleg Deripaska, and nobody raised an eyebrow. Nobody had the slightest problem with any of it. You get a perfunctory warning from the government, hey, Senator McCain, you might want to be careful, dangerous Russian oligarch, a guy, they all have yachts. You got to be real careful getting on the thing, Senator. But other than that, we just thought you'd like to know. Same players, same efforts, but when it happened in the McCain campaign, nothing to see here. No Russian collusion, no Russian meddling, no nothing. Of course, there wasn't a McCain dossier either. Anyway, let me take a break. We'll come back. I owe you some time on the phones, and we'll get to that immediately upon getting back here, folks. Hang on. To the phones, this is Bob in Chicago. I'm glad you waited, sir. Great to have you with us on the EIB network. Hi.
Hey, Rush. I enrolled in the University of Limbaugh in 1990, and I still haven't graduated. What's going on with that?
Well, there are no degrees because there are no graduates. You will never graduate because the learning never stops. There's no way you get a degree here because we don't stop teaching.
Exactly. You know how people, when they graduate, they get a bumper sticker? 1994, I had a bumper sticker on my truck in Chicago, Russia's right. I experienced my first leftist violence against me because of that sticker. A guy in traffic got out and started punching my truck, screaming, F Rush. Well, he lost that battle. Enough said. I'm just letting you know how it is out there. You were the one that led the way, and I had to take my Trump stickers off my truck because of the violence against me. Very crazy out here. But concerning McCain, God rest his soul, bless him and his family, and give him comfort. He was a war hero, a great military man. But, ironically, he became the Jane Fonda of the Republican Party. Kind of scary. Very scary.
Nah, wait a minute. I wouldn't. What do you mean? No.
Well, come on.
No. Nobody in our party's ever done a Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda got on a North Vietnamese anti-aircraft gun and started pretending to shoot down planes.
Well, I consider the Democrat Party truly the enemy of the United States, and I'm not the only one. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many people, Rush, I started listening to you not to get information from you because you agreed with me growing up. What you said, I was attracted to your radio, your show, is because I'm listening. I go, wait a minute. Here's a guy that actually speaks like me and my relatives and my friends and my police buddies and my military buddies. This guy's right on.
That's right.
Yeah, Jane Fonda, that's extreme. But he was a betrayer. And I wonder if this sounds mean because he did die, but guess what? We're all going to die. But Jane Fonda is an extreme comment to say. But at the same time, do you think John McCain hated Trump when Trump was giving money to his donating to his campaign? Do you think any of these guys that hated Trump?
You sound like you're calling in the middle of traffic, like you're in the middle of the road out there, and I'm having trouble hearing you. But I've got enough to deal with this, I think. The acrimony between Trump and McCain is obvious. But it predates it predates Trump saying that he doesn't respect military people who get caught. He has no respect for people who get captured. McCain and Trump have never did have a mutual admiration society. There was acrimony between them for a long time. And it was culminating. McCain got his payback. He triumphantly came back to Washington and voted very visibly thumbs down to repealing and replacing Obamacare. And I'm telling you, that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. A lot of Republicans were rubbed the wrong way by that. But the never-Trumpers and the people that hated Trump loved it because their hatred of Trump is far more valuable to them than the advancement of policy they agree with. That's how personal all of this is. But the acrimony, I mean, it started, I think, even before. There was a reason Trump said those things about McCain early on in his campaign. But McCain is not in any way traitorous. I can't even discuss that with a straight face. of all the people to compare McCain to, Jane Fonda was the absolute, there is literally no connection whatsoever. Now, I know what he's trying to say. McCain sabotaged his own party a number of times, this guy thinks, by siding with Democrats. And in his mind, Democrats are the enemy of America. And McCain siding with them is on a par with Jane Fonda siding with the North Vietnamese. But McCain never once in his life intended to dishonor America or think that America was the problem in the world to the point of aligning with our enemies, which is what Jane Fonda was doing. McCain is the antithesis to Jane Fonda. No matter how you want to draw up comparisons and analogies. But look, the man has passed away. He was 81. He's been suffering from a really, really devastating cancer for over a year. He outlasted every doctor prediction on his survival. I remember reading when it was announced publicly, when the McCain family announced the kind of cancer he had, the brain cancer behind his left ear. I remember reading, you can read people saying anything these days, and I remember reading a couple of doctors, after familiarizing themselves with the diagnosis, they were brutal in their assessment of the length of time Senator McCain had. In some cases, a month or two, but he made it a full year after the diagnosis. But Senator McCain is like any of us. He had a family who loved him and cherished him, and that he loved and cherished, that he devoted everything to. There's nothing about Senator McCain, the way he lived his life, that is worthy of criticism in the days following his death. We're all going to have political disagreements with people, and they seem now to be as partisan and unwielding as they've ever been in many people's lifetimes, so much so that all kinds of decorum and custom is blown to smithereens in America each and every day in terms of polite way to deal with people and their suffering or their family suffering or death. Depending on where you go, you can find people have no respect for that whatsoever and no sensitivity to anybody's feelings at all. They'll just launch with whatever they think and say at whatever time they feel like doing it, and in the process hope they get noticed doing it. I had running battles with Senator McCain, and he had, I forget the number of times, but he had his ongoing insults for me. It was largely over comprehensive immigration reform. And I had an imitation for the way he spoke that, he thought was a little bit overdone at times. But at the same time, John McCain, the human being, and the life he lived is, there's no sense in trying to poke holes in it in any way, shape, manner, or form. This is not the time to try to score any political points. Well, weren't you just doing that with the story of Rick Davis? No, folks. I'm trying to point out the Russians have been all over Republicans since 2008. And back when they were trying to infiltrate the McCain campaign, nobody cared. It wasn't any big deal. My only point, I got to take a break now. We'll be back. Don't go away. New York governor pardons sex offenders so they can vote. This story is 4 days old. It's about Governor Cuomo. And we've got, look, as I told you, all 3 hours to get to everything I've got today, and that's still the case, plus nuking, getting your calls involved in the mix, plus illegal immigration and the death of Molly Tibbetts. I want some audio sound bites from last week to air, too, so hang on. Well, are they not just behaving true to type? I mean, that's exactly what you would expect. Without John McCain, where is the Republican that will put country ahead of party? Are they kidding me? Put country ahead of party? When do they ever do that themselves? The Democrats, it's party ahead of, it's Democrat party is country. Anyway, greetings and welcome back, my friends. It's wonderful to have you here Rush Limbaugh behind the golden EIB microphone at 800-282-2882. Now, there's a companion story to this Washington Post story that I shared. I think this is bombshell stuff. I really do. Look, we found it going back to the Washington Post 2008, 10 years ago. I mean, I can't say this is a scoop, but I haven't seen anybody else go back and find this. I mean, Rick Davis, McCain's campaign manager, working for Manafort Davis, or Davis Manafort, a lobbying firm. The Manafort part of that firm is going to jail. Rick Davis helped introduce McCain to a Russian oligarch, Oleg Deripaska, who is a central figure in the Trump Tower meeting with Trump Jr. and Russians, which they're trying to say proves Trump knew and that there was collusion and all that. But back when it was happening in the McCain campaign, nobody cared. In fact, the FBI warned Senator McCain to be careful of Oleg Deripaska. The guy could have ties to Putin. You might want to be very careful in dealing with the guy. No such warnings for Donald Trump. Now, there's a companion story to this from 2018, and it is by Sarah Carter, who, this is from the archives of Circa, which is where she used to work with, I think maybe still does, John Solomon. It turns out that she did remember McCain's connection to Davis Manafort back in June of this year. The drive-by media ignored her story. She adds some details to the Washington Post piece that the Washington Post missed, such as the fact that Rick Davis was McCain's campaign manager in 2000 as well. And her headline, this was back in June of this year, so just a couple months ago. Here's the Russia influence controversy that John McCain doesn't want you to know about. Sarah Carter, the same foreign lobbyists and Russians tied to the Trump investigation were once associated to Senator McCain when he ran for president. Senator McCain, always the political maverick, recently bucked his own party by refusing to defend Trump in the Russia investigation, even suggesting the matter was reaching epic proportions. Well, Senator McCain was the front of the line in making sure that everybody knew about the dossier. He sent one of his staff on a plane across the Atlantic Ocean to get a copy of it when he first heard about it. I mean, look, and don't anybody start climbing on my back here. This is not to be critical of Senator McCain. It's not what this is. As usual, we are pointing out the lying hypocrisy of the drive-by media, the Democrat Party, and the deep state. Because when McCain's campaign manager was setting up all these meetings for McCain with these Russians, it was no big deal. Nobody gave it a second thought. Nobody thought the Russians were trying to meddle or collude or any of that. Now, maybe they didn't think McCain had a chance of beating Obama, and he didn't. Obama had 2-1 electoral vote advantage over McCain when the voting was done. But still, this is just uncanny. The same foreign lobbyists, Davis Manafort, and the same Russians tied to the Trump investigation were once associated to Senator McCain when he ran for president. McCain, the political maverick, recently bucked his own party by refusing to defend Trump in the Russia investigation. He said, "I think it's reaching the point, it's a Watergate size and scale," Senator McCain said. There was just one fact missing, though. Exactly 10 years earlier, it was McCain's own campaign that was being roiled by concerns of possible Russian influence in his own inner circle. In fact, McCain's drama involved the same foreign lobbyist, Paul Manafort, one of the same Russian oligarchs, Oleg Deripaska, the same Russian diplomat, Sergei Kislyak, and the same wily Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, all of whom now dominate the current Trump controversy. The only difference? The FBI has said that there is no evidence to date that Trump ever met with a Russian figure banned from the U.S., but McCain did. McCain actually met twice with Oleg Deripaska, a Russian businessman and Putin ally, whose visa was blocked by the U.S. amidst intelligence community concerns about his ties to the Kremlin. The meetings were arranged by Paul Manafort and his lobbying firm partner, Rick Davis, who later would become McCain's campaign manager, according to interviews and documents. Davis was McCain's campaign manager both 2000 and 2008. Manafort, who was Trump's campaign manager for 3 months, resigned in August 2016 over questions of prior work with Ukrainian political parties. U.S. intelligence raised concerns to McCain's staff about the Davis-Manafort lobbying firm work. This is according to Weaver. Is this Rick Weaver? Anyway, McCain's office also was warned by U.S. intelligence about possible Russian military connections to one of his policy advisors, causing aides to scramble to separate the Russian-born expert from the senator. McCain did not fire Rick Davis. Trump did fire Manafort the moment he heard there might be a problem. Trump was not warned by U.S. officials. McCain was. Manafort was first questioned by the FBI about his Russian and Ukrainian ties in 2014, 2 years before he became Trump's campaign manager for 100 days. And agents probed him on how he first came to work for Deripaska, who McCain's top political advisor. Well. And this story goes on. There's a whole other full page. Look, we're going to put both links at rushlimbaugh.com. So you'll be able to read them in entirety yourself, either at our website or on the rushlimbaugh.com app. And that is just another glaring example of the two-tier justice system that we have going on here. McCain, a proud, accepted member of the Washington establishment, the deep state, whatever, he was warned, he was told to be careful. Nothing happened. There was nothing. Anybody thought that there was anything untoward between the Russians and McCain meeting. Versus now, same people who met with McCain and his campaign manager now involved with Trump, except they're not. They never met Trump. These people never met Trump. He never took a meeting with them. And yet, Trump colluded with Russia to steal the election from Hillary. Well, where was the story McCain colluding with Russia to steal the election from Obama? Well, obviously, we didn't get that story. Back to the audio sound bites. I want to go back to September 20th for this sound bite. It'll be followed up with one from Professor Dershowitz talking about the investigation and, once again, my characterization of just how serious the establishment is to get the Trumpster. It's an effort to destroy Trump and his business, to wipe him out and anybody associated with him. As the biggest lesson outsiders could be taught, don't try this again. This pre-dawn raid, picking the lock, Manafort's house, and now Manafort, release what you found. I got nothing to hide. I didn't do anything. I don't doubt for a minute, whatever this is, I know it's an effort to destroy Trump, and I don't mean just destroy him reputationally. They are going to try to wipe him out, folks. That's what this all is. And everybody associated with him. So you see, I thought that back in 2017, almost a year ago. And then when I learned about all of these cases being passed off to the New York SDNY and the Manhattan DA, and they got immunity granted to the Trump Organization CFO. Well, here's Professor Dershowitz this morning on Fox and Friends. And the question, if I'm an independent businessman who has ever thought about running, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to run because, as you said, you can look through all your things. They can find something on anybody. Why would anybody do this, Professor?
The biggest crime you can commit in America today is to have been associated with Donald Trump. If you're associated with Donald Trump, they're going to Manafort you, they're going to Cohen you, they're going to do all of these things to you, and they're going to look hard, and they're going to search, and they're going to stretch. The only people who are going to run for office now are going to be independently wealthy people who don't have to rely on their businesses, or people who come from backgrounds where there is no vulnerability at all. Businessmen are going to be deterred from running for office because they know it's going to result in a kind of legal colonoscopy. It's the Al Capone approach. If we can't get him on the grounds that we'd really like to get him on, let's go after him on taxes. Let's go after him on business. It's targeting people. And if they can target President Trump, they can target you. They can target anyone.
A legal colonoscopy. That's the Dershowitz way of saying media anal exam, which has always been my line. Republicans get a media anal, the Democrats get nothing. And Professor Dershowitz is right here. Anybody associated with Trump or anybody thinking of doing what Trump has done is also being targeted here with threats. Meaning, hey, see what we're doing to Trump? You think you're clean? They're sending all kinds of messages. Now, we talked earlier here about how the Democrats have decided to stop talking about impeachment. It's a bunch of news stories in which the advice has gone out from on high for the Democrat upper echelon to stop talking about impeachment. Oh, by the way, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said last week, I missed this when it happened. She said last week that climate change is killing Americans and the United States government is complicit in allowing it to happen. Not a single elected official, Democrat or Republican, should accept money from fossil fuel corporations. Americans are dying from global warming. Now that's sophistry. It's absolute. That is embarrassingly stupid. And yet she believes it, so much so that she goes public with it, expecting accolades. She believes it because a bunch of hate-filled professors and others have taught her this. Anyway, Eric Swalwell is a Democrat from California, a frequent guest on cable networks around the world, who believes that Trump did it, who believes that Trump is vile, who believes that Trump should go, said yesterday on This Week on ABC, we don't have enough evidence to impeach Trump. We don't want to be as reckless with the facts as he is. I think having thorough investigations, putting forth an impenetrable case, doing it in a bipartisan way is the proper way to do this, but we're not there yet. Now, I don't know if Swalwell is simply following instructions from on high to start de-emphasizing impeachment and don't talk about it. Can I ask a question about it? Why are they doing that? Why are they advising themselves not to talk about impeachment? Well, they think it might hurt their efforts to take back the House. But wait, if everybody hates Trump, as they claim, and if the Democrats cannot wait to vote, if the Democrats are so motivated and so inspired, chomping at the bit, can't wait to get out there, isn't it because they want to see Trump impeached? So what is there to be afraid of? If everybody hates Trump, if everybody voted for Trump realizes they made a big mistake, if everybody is embarrassed by what they did, then why is campaigning on impeaching Trump going to be harmful? Could it be, ladies and gentlemen, that they know that their primary campaign rhetoric is a pack of lies? We got another poll out. 90% of Republicans approve of Donald Trump as president and his presidency as is at the moment. That's got to rip the heart out of these people in the media. That's been their primary objective, to separate Trump from his voters. And yeah, they have failed. And now they're supposed to shut up about impeachment? That doesn't jibe with what they say is happening in America, where people embarrassed, hate, disgusted with Trump, want Trump gone. Well, let's go to the audio sound bites. We go to Meet the Press. F. Chuck Todd and one of the hosts from NPR do not like the fact that the Democrats are going to go silent on impeachment. Chuck Todd says to the guest, Joshua Johnson, there's some in President Trump's orbit who think the threat of impeachment actually will motivate his base.
I'm just not sure what else Democrats have that's going to motivate them to show up at the polls more ardently than the prospect of doing something about Donald Trump. I mean, I understand why Republicans are motivated to keep that agenda in place. What else is there emotionally to get Democrats out?
I was just going to say, I think the Democratic leadership and the disconnect, and I'm thinking all of these responsible Democratic leaders that are preaching impeachment caution, are these people, the base may say, give me Michael Avenatti. I don't want you responsible guys.
Give me Michael Avenatti. So anyway, the point, F. Chuck Todd is distressed at the Democrat. And by the way, he's a newsman. He's not an opinion guy, right? This is Meet the Press. He's supposed to interview people. He's supposed to get people to make news. He's telling the guys, guess what he thinks? He thinks the Democrats are screwing up. The Democrats need to be talking about impeachment. And if they won't, then go get Michael Avenatti, who will. F. Chuck Todd not happy with the Democrat strategery here to stop talking about impeachment. They want Trump gone, and they think most Americans do too. They don't understand why the Democrats want to keep this under wraps. And the answer is obvious. It isn't helpful. And we will be back after this. Back to the phones in just a minute, but you got to hear one more. The drive-bys are bringing back from Jurassic Park Tom Brokaw. Tom Brokaw on Meet the Press Sunday with F. Chuck Todd, where they're still steaming over the fact that Democrats are going to drop the threat to impeach Trump from their campaign rhetoric. F. Chuck says to Brokaw that at least 70 people, nominees for the United States Senate this November. What lessons do you hope they take? 70 people nominees for the... What lessons do you hope they take away from what they learn about John McCain's life this week?
That there's something greater than the party label, that there's something greater than a kind of ideological, if you will, an ideological attachment to whatever the mood of the day is, that you have to look at the needs of the country. And the needs of the country are not just the domestic issues, but where we stand internationally, and have the courage, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, to take a stand against what you know is not the best interest of the country, but it happens to be the ideology of whoever is in the White House at the time. We need more people who will sail against the wind.
When is the last person like this who passed away they praised this way? They never praise Democrats this way. They never praise most Republicans this way. What Brokaw is saying here is we need more Republican sellouts. We need more people who are going to trash the Republican Party. That's what we need. We need help in destroying the Republican Party from other Republicans. That's what we need. That's a great statesman. That's somebody we can count on. Somebody that will put country above party. I'm telling you, folks, they're taking the occasion of the death of an American hero to advance their own agenda while accusing everybody else of doing it. They are the ones doing it. They are using the death of Senator McCain to trash every nearby Republican they can, either directly or by implication. So here's Brokaw hoping that future Senate candidates learn that there's something greater than the party label. You mean like Senator Kennedy? Senator Kennedy was greater than the party label. They never say this about Democrats, because the Democrats are the country. The left is the established order, and the right and conservatism are not. The right and conservatism stand in the way of the liberal order ruling each and every day. So when they find a Republican that they can hoodwink into criticizing and ripping his own party and his fellow Republicans, the guy becomes a hero. Except when that guy runs for office, and then he becomes just like every other piece of Republican trash. We've seen it, folks. We have seen it. And this is another avenue to rip Trump that's been handed to them. Inbox has all kinds of evidence that identity fraud is alive and well. Some of them are more clever than others. Some pose as a receipt from Amazon or a survey from another online retailer. Some people that you do business with ask you to take a customer service survey. I mean, there's all kinds of phishing tricks out there because these cyber thieves are clever. And all it takes from you is a single click on a phony link for them to be able to get contact information, password data, whatever they want from your computer. And from there, they have access to your online identity, and they can start making money either by selling it or by using it, your data. Now, most of the time, you won't know this is happening. You won't know what's happening on the spot. You'll have no clue whatsoever. Online identity theft is a silent crime. You might find out a month later when you get your credit card bill. You might not find out for a little while after that because they may not sell your data instantly. They may not start using it immediately. And the longer after the theft it goes that you don't know anything, the less you're going to suspect anything's wrong. But this is all why you should become a LifeLock member. Millions and millions and millions of people are. LifeLock provides the best online identity theft protection there is from the time you sign on with LifeLock. You give them your data in a confidential way. They then start monitoring. They create an online profile of you. And then nobody's sitting there following you by name. There are too many members for that to happen. They create an online profile that is actually just a computer chart readout for every number. The number represents a client. And that profile is established after a month or so as your normal monthly behavior online. And everything's fine as long as things don't change. But if there's a spike in spending, or if you open a bank account, something that's not part of your profile, then the LifeLock computers start red alerting and flagging the LifeLock system operators, who then in turn inform you and ask you if this unusual activity is because you're doing it. And if you are, you say, yeah, it's me, and everybody goes away. If you reply, no, that's not me with that big spending item there, or this new account, then is when they get into gear. And the sooner you reply, the faster they'll be able to track it down, sometimes on the spot, but sometimes it takes a little while to do it. But the point is, once LifeLock's on the case, it's going to get fixed one way or the other. They've got a group of people they call a rapid response team, the restoration team, and these people do nothing but fix instances of fraud, working with you personally, U.S.-based, until it's all fixed. There's nobody that does what LifeLock does. Nobody does it as well, and nobody offers the services. But folks, LifeLock, nobody else can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions, but there's nobody, as I say, even approaches LifeLock's ability. And now they are adding Norton security software when you buy it. That's stuff you install on the computer to protect the hardware against malware. Go to lifelock.com, call 800-440-4833. Use my name when you sign up, 10% off, and a $25 Amazon gift card with annual enrollment. There's some terms apply, but you can check them out there at lifelock.com or 800-440-4833. Okay, Elaine in Independence, Oregon, thank you for waiting. Great to have you with us today. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm I'm worn out, but I'm good.
I know. In your first hour, you were talking about how incensed you were about the Pope making a huge deal about global warming instead of the pedophilia that's going on in the Catholic Church.
Well, no, it didn't quite do that. When it comes to global warming, the Pope brings in all the oil executives and demands immediate action. But with his own church and with whatever's going on with the child sex abuse, he ignores it and doesn't do anything about it.
Well, that's right, because the Catholic Church is always supposed to be a global thing, and he's really gone to the global elite's whole agenda on what's going on, because the Catholic Church is never supposed to read the Bible. They had their masses in Latin. They didn't read the word in English. They read it in Latin. They have been recently, but not completely. So they're actually supposed to go with the leaning of the Pope. So if you get the Pope going in one direction, which I'm sure the elitists have been able to do very easily, because the Pope never gave all their multi-billions of dollars to the poor, they keep it in a vault underneath the Vatican. They're never, ever supposed to tell people.
No. It's the bones of St. Peter that are in a vault underneath the Vatican. The Vatican does hoard money. I mean, but the Vatican, this is a big misnomer. They do spend a lot on the Catholic charities. Look, there's some great things the Catholic Church does. You're right, they're worldwide. The U.S. population, the U.S., what did I say? 5% of Catholics are United States citizens. The Catholic Church is huge around the world. And they do handle and deal with a lot of charitable activities. They do a lot of good work. They don't hoard things, and they don't disabuse people reading the Bible. I don't know where that comes from. I mean, I've been to Catholic Mass. The Bible is read. But the Pope is political. Look, this is the problem with the left. The Pope is a leftist. He's a leftist socialist from wherever he's from, Argentina, whatever. And the left corrupts everything that they touch. Everything that they get their hands on ends up being corrupted because they politicize it. They politicize the Department of Justice, for crying out loud. That's why we have a two-tier justice system right now in Washington with the DOJ vis-a-vis Trump and Hillary. I mean, there's clearly Republicans get investigated and prosecuted and Democrats don't. But it's more accurate to say that the Pope and his liberalism, he's unable to leave it at the door. When he became Pope, he took it right in to the Vatican with him. And he's doing things with it previous popes have not done. And I think when you look at the pedophilia scandal and you look at the lack of action and maybe looking the other way, not doing anything about it, does that not coincide nicely with liberalism and the way they deal with these things? So in a way, it's consistent. If you want a full-fledged leftist activist running your organization, well, you're going to get Venezuela, or you're going to get Chicago, or you're going to get Detroit, or you're going to get Cuba. This is what you're going to get. No matter what they end up in charge of with no opposition and no checks or balances, you're going to get ruination. In the name of freedom and expression and non-judgmentalism, but man, if there's any place that judgmentalism ought to be ruling the day, it would be major churches, major religions. I mean, what else are they for? Other than the moral straight and narrow and strength of faith. Anyway, I just think this is what you get. It shouldn't surprise anybody. This is what I wish were more obvious to everybody. It shouldn't surprise anybody what happens to any organization, I don't care how large or small, when leftists end up running it with no check or balance on their power. 23 and 24. Martha McCallum on Fox last Thursday night was on fire. She first had the lawyer for the murderer of Molly Tibbetts on, and this guy was just... We've got the bites. I don't have time to get them in. This guy was obfuscating left and right. She was not having any of it. Then came the Grim Reaper. You know, whenever somebody dies, you can guarantee that Fox is going to bring out Geraldo. And they brought Geraldo out to do the appropriate, you can't blame every illegal every time one of them commits murder. 2 bites. She really, really was on fire here. Here's the first. This was Geraldo here, sets everything up.
To be called by that bottom-feeding politician an accomplice to this young lady's murder is something that I cannot abide. He is...
Oh, wait, stop the tape. Dan Patrick, earlier that day, the lieutenant governor of Texas, had said, Geraldo, I never met the guy, but for crying out loud, this guy and everybody else are accomplices. Every time one of these illegals commits murder, all these people are accomplices because they won't let us do anything about shutting down the border and so forth. And Geraldo took great offense. So that's what he's talking about. The bottom-feeding politician is the great lieutenant governor of Texas, Dan Patrick.
Typing 11 million people in our country here without documentation. They care for our babies. They mow our lawns. They wash our dishes. They pick our fruit. They pack our meat. They process our poultry. And to characterize that entire group of people as all of them murderers, this case in Iowa is an awful case. This person should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But what I was doing and what I am doing right now is begging people. I know that most of the Fox audience disagrees with me, but I'm begging you to have compassion and not brand this entire population by the deeds of this one person.
Nobody was. Nobody was. They were trying to brand this one guy who everybody's trying to defend. Anyway, here's Martha then engaging the Grim Reaper, and it's really good.
We are putting that spin. We at this network are putting that spin on this story.
It's not spin, it's
this
a
is
fact.
a murder
It's a
story.
fact.
This is not an immigration story. It is a fact.
It's
If
a
we're
fact
talking
that he was
facts
here
from the
illegally,
Pew
is it
Research
not?
Center, it's a fact that from the Pew Research Center and every other objective story, and in today's New York Times, for example, that is proven that the undocumented immigrants commit fewer crimes per capita
absolutely right. I
than
looked at those numbers
citizen
this morning.
Americans.
It doesn't change
That's a
the
fact.
bottom line,
That's
which
a
is
fact.
that this
so
person
then what
who
is
killed
the
this
relevance?
woman was
What
here
is the-
illegally. It adds to the pain
Yeah, he was-
and to
he
the
was also
misery of the
5'6".
situation to
Are we
know
gonna
that
go
not
after
only did this happen, but it didn't have to happen. If we had a system that allowed
See,
people
this
to
is
come and go, and he didn't have to work under a name that wasn't his name.
He should not have been here, she ended up saying later. He shouldn't have. Geraldo filibustering there. She was really on fire, that whole show on this subject, first with the reprobate's lawyer and then the Grim Reaper here. But by the way, this survey that the Grim Reaper cited, where he says it's proven that undocumented immigrants commit fewer crimes per capita, that's a Cato survey, Cato Institute, of a subset of a Texas survey. It's not a national database. It was a subset of a survey done in Texas. It doesn't at all say what the Grim Reaper here suggests that it does. But this is the defense. Every time one of these illegals commits murder, they trot people out. You can't tar and feather on. Nobody is. We're just tarring and feathering the fact that nobody seems to want to do anything about stopping it. And it's real simple. They shouldn't be here. They are in the country illegally, and thus whatever they do need not have happened. You can't say that Molly Tibbetts was going to be killed anyway. She wouldn't have been killed by this guy, and nobody else has tried to kill her. People are so tone deaf on this. Hey, folks, you are so much better off having a home security system that works and that is easy to operate. I've been to a lot of places that have home security systems, and after a while they stop arming them because there's a fault somewhere in it that's been too hard to track down, and it doesn't stop beeping for no reason. Or you can't arm it because there's a fault in some far-flung window in the attic that nobody wants to get up there and fix. So there hasn't been a break-in in a couple of months, so they don't arm it. Well, why have it? That'll never be the case with Simply Safe. We had a caller at Open Line Friday, illustrated the point here. The listener that got through on the phone to tell us he and his wife had purchased a Simply Safe home security system. He had recommended it to her as a solution to her feeling uncomfortable when he was away on business trips. She was left home alone. She heard noises at night that made her nervous. She bought it. She bought Simply Safe while he was away on a trip. He came home to find it in a box on the front porch, ready to be installed. And he did it himself. He readily took it on. He made the installation in an hour. He was not intimidated by the process. There's nothing to be intimidated by because there aren't any wires. That changes everything in terms of installing and setting this up. For a long time, everybody assumed you needed an installation crew and a site survey, and you do for the other guys, but not with Simply Safe. You can install it yourself. No wires. Wi-Fi signals instead. The system you buy comes pre-tested, pre-configured. You can protect every window, every door in your home with all the sensors you need from Simply Safe. Then you can equip your home with motion detectors, HD cameras, so that you have fully protected your home, and you can monitor it when you are away. You can even monitor the cameras when you're there. Somebody's at the front door, you don't have to go there and look. You can see on your phone. Simply Safe 24/7 monitoring is just $14.99 a month. That tells the cops or the fire department there is a problem. That's $14.99 a month with no contract, no 2-year deal, and it's not $50, it's $14.99. Go online and check. SimplySafeUSA.com. You save 10% off the plan you choose at that website and a 60-day money-back guarantee. 2 months to decide whether or not it is what I say it is. And you'll find out much sooner than 60 days that it is what I say it is. SimplySafeUSA.com. There's still some stuff like small business ownership among black Americans jumps 400% since Trump's election. Doctor shortage explodes thanks to Obamacare. Let's see. What's the next one? A special prosecutor shouldn't. The great editorial in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette about the Mueller investigation and how the Russians are using robots with the Molly Tibbetts death to distract from Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, UK Independent claims the Russians are using robots to distract everybody's attention away from Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort so that Trump is not damaged. I kid you not. And the drive-by media upset that Trump dared to go play golf 17 hours after McCain passed away. They were livid, my friends. So, but we got pretty much all of it in. I feel good about that, and we'll be back here tomorrow to do it again. See you.